Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Bible study. We are in Isaiah chapter 18 today, and I'll be honest with you. So, I read this chapter, and you know how sometimes you read things and you're like, I wasn't really paying attention. My mind was somewhere else. I didn't really comprehend what I was reading. Well, I was like, that must have happened because I got to the end and I didn't understand it. So, I locked in kind of and reread it again. And I was after I read it, I was like, I think I understand English, but I'm not sure anymore. So then I put it on an audio Bible and listened to it, and I was struggling. And I've read it I don't know how many times now, but then I went to some commentaries after thinking over the text, and almost all of them universally say something about how this is the most difficult chapter within Isaiah to come to like a general consensus about its interpretation, its context, and some of the references that are in it. So that made me feel a little bit better. Just know if you read this one and you walked away to like, what is that? Don't worry, you're not the only one. Let's talk about it. Isaiah 18 is an oracle regarding the nation of Kush, which is located south of Egypt in modern-day North Sudan. When we think about timeline here, the date of this oracle is not certain, but we do know that it was prior to 701 BC because that was the year that Assyria, led by King Sennacherib, attempted and failed to besiege Jerusalem. Our important figures in chapter 18 are going to be Isaiah, God's prophet, and then the nation of Kush. Kush, which is called Ethiopia in other versions of the Bible, it was along the Red Sea just south of Egypt. There are two words that I want to take a closer look at, and for this first one, I'm not really even going to be able to clarify it too much for you, but we'll do our best. Whirring wings in verse 1. Isaiah referred to Cush as the land of whirring wings, and there's all kind of discussion about what this is a reference to. No one's exactly clear on it. It could be a reference to the winged insects that inhabit the Nile River, or it could refer metaphorically to the sails of the ships of the people of Cush, which are talked about in this chapter. We also have papyrus in verse 2. Papyrus is a reed that grows natively along the Nile River, and it was used to make small boats, and it was also used as one of the first forms of paper. That's probably the way that you're familiar with it. Okay, so now we turned the page, and we've got 7 verses, but do not let these 7 verses trick you. They are not easy. This is not a quick study. An oracle regarding Cush. Isaiah 18, as I mentioned, is a challenging chapter, and many commentators concur that it is the most difficult in Isaiah. It is thought that Isaiah's words in this chapter were a response to envoys from Cush that were attempting to make an alliance with Judah against the Assyrian threat. The people of Judah were not supposed to put their trust in foreign allies because remember, God had already promised to save them from Assyria. There's no need for this kind of running out to other nations to find military support to beat the Assyrians. Judah was supposed to have faith in God that he was going to do this. Cush sent many ships up and down the Nile River and the Red Sea, and they sent ambassadors to other lands to conduct diplomacy. And it may have been on account of one of these ambassadors reaching Judah and Jerusalem that God gives this oracle through Isaiah. So these ambassadors are mentioned in the first couple of verses, and then these swift messengers in verse 2 are mentioned, and it appears that maybe these were messengers that were sent from Judah back to Cush with replies to this diplomatic effort. Isaiah described the people of Cush as powerful, as feared among the nations, and indeed they were one of the great African empires, and curiously, as a nation tall and smooth. Now, tall, that's pretty easy to understand, but smooth, what is that? The best explanation that I've heard is that, the ancient Egyptians used to shave off all of their body hair. Could be that maybe these people had adopted a similar practice, and so in that sense, their skin was smooth. But at the end of the day, God had no use for the power of Cush. He had no reason to nurture an alliance between them and his people, because he had already promised to save Judah by his power, not by, some foreign ally's power. Verse 5 is tricky to understand. I think it's easier in the American Standard Version, and I've got that cited here. It reads like this: For thus hath Jehovah said unto me, I will be still, and I will behold in my dwelling place, like clear heat in sunshine, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. So God here is pictured at rest. He's unconcerned with the Assyrian threat. He's unconcerned with these diplomatic relations. He's watching the Assyrian plot develop as passively as sunshine and dew falling on a growing field as the crops grow month over month. He would rest until he was ready. And then at that point, he would rise up and very quickly, no problem at all for him, cut down the crops and thwart everything that the Assyrians had been planning. So like a fruit tree, that brought its fruit to 90% ripeness, but then had its branches lopped off, so the Assyrians would be at the doorstep of achieving their plans when God cut them down. It's interesting, again, that we see Assyria compared to a tree that God's cutting down. We've seen that in past chapters, Assyria being a forest that God, the axeman, is going to go out and cut down when they reach Jerusalem. And here again, we see a really similar picture. God was going to leave Assyria like fallen fruit for the wild animals. And we're told that when God accomplished this, the mighty people of Kush would come to Jerusalem to pay tribute to the God of Judah. So that is my stab at chapter 18. There are some other interpretations, not wildly varying or anything like that, but if you have some extra time to do some more study, it might be worth looking into some of the other interpretations of some of those verses. And some of the phrases are applied to different countries or different peoples, and so there's that for your future study. Okay, let's talk about our application. This chapter teaches us something important about God's timing. You know, as human beings, when we perceive that there's a threat on the horizon, we start preparing for it and we start praying about it immediately. And we want quick answers. We want swift reassurance that the threat has been prepared for adequately and that we're going to be able to overcome it when it arrives. We need that assurance. And when we don't get that reassurance as quickly as maybe we would like, we start to worry. Maybe we're even tempted to do some things that we shouldn't do, like Judah here. They're tempted to go out and make foreign alliances because God is taking his time. But this chapter is an encouragement for us to wait for God, wait for God's help. You know, God doesn't need to prepare for months in advance. He doesn't need to execute some elaborate, drawn-out plan to save us from trouble. In his infinite power, he can literally just snap his fingers and save us from any threat within human imagination. And that's pictured here. In Isaiah 18, the greatest military force known to man was marching on Judah. And God was just resting to tackle the most formidable human force in existence. God needed no preparation. He just, no big deal, I'll take care of him when I'm ready. So the lesson is, don't get stressed out when troubles start to creep up on you. God is watching, and he will rise to help you when he deems the time to be right. That's our study in chapter 18. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow to do 19.